And after that, bishop to c5 by Carlsen. He mirrors the position, and guys, this complete setup is known as the Guiso Pianismo, a solid, slow-burning opening. And after that, d3. Basically, Duda plays the quiet move. He is not in a hurry to open the center. He wants a solid maneuvering game. And after that, knight to f6. And you can see Magnus is now ready to castle, getting save his king. And now to unpin his knight, Carlsen brings his bishop back to e7, and after that bishop to g3. And basically Duda simply gets back on g3, keeping pressure on e5 pawn. So that's why to defend this, d6 by Carlsen, strengthening the pawn structure as well as opening the diagonal for his light square bishop. And after that, a4. And Duda now expand on the queen side. So to counter this, black can also start pushing the g pawn on the king side. But instead, here Carlsen goes for a5, stopping any b4 ideas, locking the queen side a bit. And c3, preparing for queen to b3, and you can see the target. So to defend this, Carlsen decides to finally castle, getting his king safe. To knight to d2, g6. And here Carlsen prepares to fianchetto the king. And guys, this is a very unorthodox setup from Carlsen. He is going to put his king on g7, aiming for a solid but aggressive formation. Okay, so h3, basically creating the h2 square for the bishop if black pawns get too extended. And now black can consider the move knight to h5 so that he can attack this active bishop, but instead knight to h7 by Carlsen, which indicates that he's either preparing to push the f1 in the future or maybe creating space for the bishop. Anything is possible. Okay, so now Duda castled, king to g7. And Magnus puts his king on g7, a hallmark for his deep preparation. The king is safe, and basically this move connects black pieces, and now black is ready for f5, which is a direct kingside assault. And now Duda counters by striking the center, bishop to f6, putting pressure on d4 and also eyeing the e5 pawn. And let's suppose if this game continues like capturing on e5, knight takes e5, knight takes e5, d takes e5, and after that queen to c2 was possible, and you can see both players are slowly bringing their pieces into the game. But Duda prefers to keep the pieces on the board. I mean, after bishop to f6, he directly goes for queen to c2, developing the queen as well as keeping the tension. Okay, now Carlsen brings the knight to g5, putting pressure on the king side. Okay, so now Carlsen also includes the queen into the game, defending the e5 pawn, and after that, Duda tucks his king away, a typical prophylactic move before starting the attack. Okay, now Carlsen develops the bishop, attacking the rook. Connecting the rooks. Okay, so now basically Duda brings his knight back on h2, and you can see now he's preparing for the king side pawn storm. And now some capture happens on the center, but f4. And finally Duda goes for the attack. He's targeting the knight, but knight to e6. And guys, that's a great defensive square. And basically this move also blocks the diagonal of this light square bishop. And now if white tries to open the king side by, let's suppose, pushing f5, that would be a mistake, because after d takes c3, b takes c3, knight to c5. Okay, and after, let's suppose, f takes g6. If white thinks that he can open the king, but simply f takes g6, and you can see now black completely takes over the center. So that's why after knight to e6, Duda goes for knight to g4, and he is basically targeting the f6 and h6 square. And after that, Magnus brings his bishop to h4, which indicates that he wants to place his queen on h4. And if now white decides to exchange, but surprising, so basically, but instead of taking the bishop here, here basically Duda finds the best move, f5. He attacks the knight, and here Carlsen now goes for knight to c5. But guys, there was an absolutely crazy line here. I mean, instead of knight to c5, here black can go for this amazing move. Can you guess the move? Bishop takes c3, g3, attacking the rook. But what about f6 check? I mean, now black has to lose his queen. But guys, after queen takes f6, knight takes f6, and now I know bishop takes rook. But guys, the problem with that move is after knight takes d7, rook takes d7, bishop takes e6, f takes e6, rook takes e1, and now you can see this is completely losing for black. So that's why after knight takes f6, okay, so let me go back. The best move for black is to capture the knight instead of rook. And guys, yes, sounds crazy. I mean, the idea is after rook to e3, if let's suppose he tries to attack the bishop, but bishop to e5, and now just look at these combinations. I mean, black is completely taking control of the center. And let's suppose if now white tries to give a check by, let's suppose, rook to f1, king to g7. Okay, if rook at e goes to f3, if he puts pressure over the f7 pawn, knight to g5, attacking the rook as well as defending the pawn. Okay, and if rook goes back, now bishop to g3, and you can see now black has too much attack. But h5, okay, preparing for h4 so that he can plant this bishop permanently. Rook to e3, h4, queen to b3. If he goes for the b7 pawn, b6, simply defending it. Knight to f3, knight takes f3, rook takes f3, knight to e5, and despite being a queen down, you can see black pieces are dominating over the board. Okay, so in the game, after the move knight to c5, so basically now Duda just captures on h4, queen takes h4, and guys, that's what Carlsen wants. He's now successful in placing the queen, and now he can anytime, target this king. Okay, now knight to f3. Duda develops the knight with a tempo, attacking the queen. So queen to h5. And guys, now Duda gives a check. But guys, this might be premature. I mean, instead of this move, it's better for Duda to consider the move rook to d5. And you can see now white is threatening to give a check, and then simply rook takes queen. And guys, that would be much stronger move. But in the game after f6, Carlsen just slides the king. Rook to d5, he tries to attack, but g5, Carlsen blocks the attack. And now Duda gives a discover check by e5, and now you can see he has this amazing connected pawn structure along with this amazing position. And now to defend this check, queen to g6 might be the best option. And now if he tries to exchange the queen by, let's suppose, queen takes g6 check, king takes g6, and if bishop to a2, so that he can give a check from b1 square, but bishop to f5, simply covering the square so that he can't give a check. And now you can see here black is successfully holding the game perfectly. But in the game after this check, So basically, Carlsen slides the king back to h8, which is a mistake. And guys, I know black is now threatening to capture the knight on g4, taking advantage of this pinned h pawn, but white can easily deal with that by sliding the king to g1. And now let's suppose if the game continues like bishop takes g4, h takes g4, queen takes g4, but now comes bishop to a2, preparing bishop to b1 so that he can mate black on h7. So to stop this, if queen takes a4, queen to f5 with the same threat of bishop to b1 and then queen to h7. So to stop this, the only move is queen to f4, trying to exchange the queens, because if black becomes greedy and he decides to capture the bishop on a2 by queen takes a2, now I just want you all to pause the video and try to guess the next move which black can play in this position. And guys, if you find the move knight takes g5, then congratulations, you are a genius. The idea is after h takes g5, can you guess the next move? Yes, you are right. Rook to e3, preparing for rook to h3 check. So if black now tries to give a check, but simply king to h2, queen to a4, rook to h3 check, king to g8, and yes, you are right, queen takes g5, and that's a mate. Okay, so in the game, after king to h8, okay, so let me go back. Surprisingly, Duda also missed this move and he goes for knight at f goes to h2. He defends this check, I mean, he and basically now, as I told you that Carlsen is now threatening to capture this knight. So basically, he defends this with the move, but guys, the problem with that move is he brings the knight back on h2 from an active square which previously was covering these important squares. And after that, bishop to e6. Carlsen now attacks the rook on d5, and guys, in this position, Duda sacrificed his rook by rook takes c5. He gives up the exchange to destroy black center and creates a monster passed pawn. After that takes, bishop takes e6, Duda captures the bishop and now the e6 pawn is pinned. And after takes, and guys, now just look at this pawn. I mean, that's amazing. He's successful in creating a passed pawn on f file. Queen to b3. Duda eyes on both e6 and b7, and here the best move for black is to go for rook to d5 so that he can block the attack on e6 pawn, but instead he goes for and now Duda grabs on b7, knight to d8 attacking the queen, but queen takes c7, and now white is threatening mate in 1. So to stop this, knight to f7. Okay, queen takes a5, and you can see now white is 2 pawns up, and now this a pawn is monster. Queen to g6, Carlsen brings the queen to g6 and basically threatening h5, and also this queen can anytime jump on c2. Queen takes c5, Duda just captures another pawn, and now Carlsen gets a counterplay. I mean, he goes for h5, he attacks the knight, knight to f2. Duda brings the knight back to defend, rook to c8, and Carlsen targets the queen, queen to e3, rook to c4. And you can see Carlsen successfully activates the rook, threatening the so basically now he's threatening to push g4 so that he can disrupt the black white pawn structure, and also targeting the pawn on a4. And Duda blocks this with a knight, but Carlsen however pushes g4. He just wants to rip open the white king. Okay, so now Duda pushes the a pawn by a5, and now black must consider the move rook to a4 so that he can stop the pawn and also prevent the rook from coming to a1. But here Carlsen goes for rook to a8, which is bad. And guys, now can you spot the winning move for white? Just pause the video and try to find it by yourself. And guys, the move is knight to d6, trying to exchange the knights so that white can get a passer on d file. And let's suppose if black now goes for a5. Yes, yeah, so basically now let's suppose if he goes for the pawn, now king to g1. And basically, guys, that's a waiting move. I mean, after rook takes a5, knight takes f7 check, queen takes f7, knight takes g4, and you can see now white has a passed pawn on c file, and also a strong connection between e and f pawns. Okay, so in the game after rook to a8, here Duda misses this move and he goes for knight takes e5. Carlsen grabs the pawn, and now you can see this knight is a monster. And knight to d6. Duda tries to create counterplay, but rook to c5, putting some pressure over the a5 pawn. And now white must consider the move queen to e4 so that he can exchange the queen and reduce some pressure. But instead he blunders by knight to b7. And guys, now to win this game, black has to just find the move g3. Because if white goes for now knight to f3, knight takes f3, g takes f3, rook to h5 check, king to g1, queen to h7, queen to g2, rook to h2 attacking the queen, and if queen takes g3, rook to g8, and yup, that's all. But in the game, after knight to b7, Carlsen missed this amazing move and he goes for rook at c takes a5. He gives up the rook. The idea is after knight takes a5, rook takes a5, queen to f2. Okay, targeting the, supporting the pawn. If and now Duda, Carlsen just pushed the pawn further, attacking the pieces, but queen to b6. And guys, now and guys, now in this position, Carlsen goes for this god level move. I mean, he just sacrificed the rook by queen to h6, and you can see now he is threatening mate on h2. So to defend this, first of all, Duda gives a check, king to h7, queen to e7 check, king to h8, queen to e8 check, king to h7, queen to e7, and Duda finds a repetition, but Carlsen has a way to escape. He goes for king to h8, and now Duda gives a check asking for queen trade, which is forced. Queen takes g7, takes, king takes g7, and now we entered into the end game, and with the time trouble, anything can happen. Okay, so knight to f1, Duda attacks the pawn, but knight to d3. And now you can see this rook is attacked. So rook takes e6, Duda takes the pawn and hopes to hold. And guys, in this position, Jan-Krzysztof Duda loses on time. What a game, guys! An incredible fight between two elite players. Duda was playing really well, but as you all know, Magnus Carlsen is Carlsen. I mean, he's just too strong in the end game, and that's exactly why he's the real number one player. And I mean, what to say? Like this video and also make sure to subscribe to my channel for more videos. This is your host Bison signing off. Bye bye.